communicator, creative thinker, and strategist, and for me, one of the most innovative minds in South Africa. So, Peter, much of the property market is in disarray, and we're looking for creative thinking and solutions, which often emanate from those individuals not in the industry. So the question I want to ask you is, how do you reimagine property? How would you generate enthusiasm for the youth, and what would you do to create a trend for property right now?
It's quite a difficult one, because obviously one's got to look at the state of the country at the moment. The governance is bad. Politics, as we know, a joke. The economy is suffering. It's a problem all over the world, though. But we are facing one of the biggest issues, and it's not just something that's happening in South Africa, it's around the world, and that is the housing problem. And most developers are developing homes for the rich, and that's where they're making money. Very few are developing homes for the average, middle class and low income person who wants to start a family and starting off life. Already we know in the UK particularly, and also I was in Switzerland recently, and they also have the same problem, is that homes are out of reach of the most common people, the most basic people. And homes are often seen as a way of investments. Like where I come from in the UK, you've got to buy a house. The house is more important than your pension. It's your wealth. Even in the US, it's seen very much as not just as a status, but your wealth, like your belly. So it's a big problem when the young people can't even buy into it anymore because it's so expensive. So bringing it to South Africa, we have an even greater housing problem here. As we know, majority of the people in this country, they live in huts and shacks. That's not a home. And it has its benefits, man. You can pack it up and move to another country or move to another area fairly quickly. Unlike trying to sell a house or a property in this country, it's a bit of a problem. You're not getting your value. So we're sitting with a big issue, and that is the housing issue itself, of what we're dealing with. And I think we've got to put on more of a creative view on it. Put aside the politics, put aside governance issues and everything else. Let's look at the primary objective of housing for people. And maybe we've got to relook at this as a way of saying we shouldn't be looking at property as just as property, but maybe it's part of a package. Maybe it's part of a holistic package that we offer. Young people, they need mobility, particularly in this country. Our transport systems aren't that great. They're not bad down here in Cape Town. You've got a good system running here, but majority of people still use these very scary taxis to get to work, or the train system, which is appalling down in this country. So we should look at this as a package thing where we need to look at what young people need in general. They need accommodation. They need transportation. They need all the things we need in a home. We need the fridges and the utensils and everything else. And maybe we've got to start saying to ourselves, is this an opportunity to start creating packages that talk to different levels of our community? And we start offering these packages. And the packages are, for instance, a property. Could be a nice 1-bedroom or a bed sitter or 2-bedroom place, depending on what the requirements are. And look at the furniture for that. Look at the equipment that goes out. And even say that we start looking at the mobility as in a vehicle that's offered with it as well. So they're buying into a brand package, a lifestyle. And is that a way? Because if we're looking at that and we're buying multiple vehicles and we're buying multiple fridges, multiple microwaves, multiple beds, multiple linen and everything to package all these things, surely we should be able to get those prices down because we're buying in bulk, we're buying large amounts. And that's going to help maybe to solve the problem, particularly on the middle class side, where you've got young middle class people coming into the market and building and trying to build their future. And the other thing as well is not to get the other scary thing, and that is, image. Young people, it's all about the image, the positioning. And it would really talk to that as well, whereby you could have different levels of packages so that those that really want to spend more and really do want that image, like the financial bankers and the creatives in agencies and things like that. Image is important. they could see this as an opportunity to buy into a brand position and a brand package. And the thing that what we've got to do is clever people like yourself need to look at this and see the cost effectiveness of this and how it works. And we've got to take it down and not just look at the wealthy. We've got to look at those lower income levels and how they're coming into the market, and look at those opportunities of where we can actually start creating packages that are affordable to them, to give them the opportunity to.
It's all about the experience, and it's about building a dream, and it is the South African dream. And the youth of today want to aspire to achieve that dream, and property could be the vehicle for that because of that experience. And I mean, you're the master of creating experiences, and so we're selling lifestyles. Is that in essence what you're talking about? We're selling different categories of aspirational lifestyle.
It is, and because of the cost. The thing is, though, that we've just got to be careful. We've got to look at this market and say lifestyles. When people talk about experiential own lifestyles, this is my lifestyle, we mustn't just think of the people with money. We've got to take this lifestyle thing and say even the people with very little money still want a lifestyle. And what is that package? And incorporate property as leaving it as a separate thing, and always talking property separate, is incorporating it into a package of what makes up a lifestyle and start offering that. But I do stress this. We have to move away from just the wealthy. And we have to look at the big problem in this country. And that is literally giving those people a foot up into a lifestyle package, which incorporates all the basic needs they need to be able to live and maybe start a family and start working their way up in the economy. So,
I mean, Peter, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. So how would you look at an initial entree into this lifestyle of necessity? Obviously, I need transport. I need to be located in an environment where I'm working. So my positioning is very important. I need furniture. I need utensils. I need things to begin my life. So for a developer out there in the market that has a potential building, is it a repositioning of that asset towards selling the lifestyle, or is it repositioning the asset to create affordable tiers to break into that? How does one put this together?
Well, look, you open up an interesting thing there, and that is another problem we have in South Africa is we're mixing different types of people, but we're not mixing different levels of people.
Yes.
For instance, like in the UK, for instance, you can live in a house, but literally 2 blocks down there's a council block, and you've got people there that are probably making 12, maybe £20,000 a year. Right. And then you could be making £80,000 a year, and you're very close. In this country, it's very segregated. They talk about racial segregation. It's more an economic segregation. I think the bigger issue is that you've got people of lower income live much further out of town, which is a common thing around the world, and then pay a fortune for transportation to be able to get into work. It's a crazy scenario. And I just think that we need to look at this from that point of view and say, how do we fix that? How do we help? As well, in this case, property developers, in how do we help to actually fix that problem? For instance, just a thought that came into my head, and we're brainstorming, hoping to stimulate maybe fresh thinking and new ideas. But imagine, we've probably found that if you're dealing with those lower income areas and we're converting a particular building into apartments, which is happening a lot here in Cape Town, strangely enough. They're taking over these old buildings in the CBD, turn them into micro-living, which is I remember seeing this in Japan with the micro-living scene, which is definitely a future thinking. And converting buildings into these lifestyle environments and what have you for people, maybe the cost of a vehicle part of that is going to be too expensive. But to have a minivan, which is linked to that block, which takes people to work and it's a well looked after minivan, and it's got a proper driver who's trained, and the minivan is going through maintenance. It's this sort of thinking that we've got to start looking at. And I keep saying this, that we need to take off our property hat and say, property is very much part of a package, and say, how do we, along with mobility solutions, along with furniture solutions and lifestyle solutions, blend this together to be able to fix the problem? And so you've got to
absolutely. And of course, I mean, in South Africa now, we're moving towards the trend where people are economizing and also happy to live in smaller environments, because space has become a premium. Not only in South Africa, but all over the world. We see this in Europe, where we're living now in 40, 50 square meter apartments, even smaller. And we're happy with that on the basis that we have this extension of life in either a precinct or in an environment. And so what you're talking about is blending that, maybe trading the one for the other, and finding a way for this to be aspirational, for the youth to actually jump onto the property ladder, but also to have that lifestyle which goes along with the property. So it's really a different positioning statement from a developer. Am I right?
It is, yeah. And it's about mixing it up more. It's mixing up. So you've got the more wealthier people staying in areas where maybe there's flats where have been converted, but they're for more of the lower income people who could live there. By mixing things up like that, what it does is it opens up the opportunity for the youngsters in lower income areas to be influenced by other things besides seeing themselves as a taxi driver. You know, they open up to new thinking because they're mixing in schools and in environments where wealthier children, which are obviously going to get better things, that you, by mixing it, you create greater influences for them and make them realize that they can actually achieve other things. Because you think of it, in a low income area, children are growing up in an area where they probably only see the taxi driver as I could be that in the future. Because that's the highlight of their environment. Whereby if you mix the environments up, you find that they'll get a greater influence. They'll have a better understanding. They'll be mixing with other children that can enlighten them to new thinking and opportunities. So by mixing things up more, it really does help to grow the entire population as opposed to just the few.
And of course, Peter, one can intersperse thought leadership. One can intersperse a business center. One can bring the community within the community to a point where they can grow, they can develop, because we're finding in the younger communities of today that they genuinely want to get ahead of the game, and they equally want to aspire, and they want to be successful in business. And so you can bring an entire business center to the table and even position that in a very creative way to actually get them more immersed in developing their own abilities in whatever it is they do. And of course, we haven't spoken about the networking opportunity, which is so apparent out there. I mean, there are 25, 26 million people on Facebook every single day that are hovering around our channels. Social media is of massive interest, and this could be nicely interspersed into this idea of yours.
Yeah, no, most definitely. And again, I wonder, how many people are actually, I don't have the numbers, but actually working from home now. It must be quite a lot, because even if you go into towns and you find that it's not as busy, and companies, look, from my flat where I live, because I'm one of those people that did exactly what you were talking about. I minimized. I had a great big designer house, and I made this conscious decision to transform and change and minimize. I could do with less, and I definitely moved into a much smaller space, and I've reduced and slimmed down everything to live a more simple life and in a smaller environment. Exactly what you're talking about, a 70 square meter type space. And I've never looked back from doing that. But from my space,